promote this brand that's either starting out or get more brand awareness or exposure. So yeah, I mean, I left advertising to get back into advertising. That's kind of what's happened, but I enjoy it now because I get to be creative. I'm not really taking orders from the client. The client says, cool, Ross, we love what you're doing here. We'd love to just take our brand, and if you can just do something cool with whatever you're doing, and and just tell a story in some sort of way. And yeah, that's kind of that's the business model. Whether it's sustainable, we'll find out. But for me, it's just right now I'm enjoying it so much, and I just every time I think like, where's the next job going to come in or whatever, I just focus on what got me here, which is like, what am I going to fold next?
Mm-hmm. Oh, that's great. So with this project you're doing and now with the corporate gigs, was it something that you just figured out organically? When they started coming in, were you reading books or speaking to other mentors about how, to position yourself or how to price what it is, what you're doing, or how did that process work?
So the very first sort of stock frame animation job that I got was from a company in France, and I didn't have a clue of how to charge for this. I mean, I asked around, I asked a few friends, like, cool, so what would you charge for an animation? And then I'd say, cool, well, which I do like everything. So I do the animation, I do the design, I do the set design, whatever. So I realized that all of those elements were sort of line items or chargeable items that I could charge a client for. So I figured, well, if I can just take all of that and together, it could be a bit of money because, based on what I'd spoken to friends of mine who were working in, either making short films or they were working in advertising, doing, editing or sound or whatever. So I had all these, people that I could chat to about like, how much would you charge for this? How much do you think this is worth? Blah, blah, blah. And just slowly but surely I worked out that, cool, this is kind of basically what they're willing to charge, basically what they're willing to pay for this. And that's also what I'm willing to charge for something like that. And, at the beginning, sort of stages of it, I was still working out, whether I could do this thing. I mean, I was literally, I didn't really think like, cool, I'm just going to, craft this thing and see if I can become really good at it. I was just like, I'm just going to do it and see what happens. And, right now, I mean, I'm at the point now where I'm like, cool, I can see that I'm definitely, I have progressed and I'm a lot better than what I was. So what I'm charging for the work is I'm comfortable with that. And I've also worked out, cool, that's kind of what they're willing to pay for a piece of content or a series of content. And also being an Instagrammer, I mean, there's no hard and fast rules. Not to say that, cool, you've got 20,000 followers, you can charge $20 for posting about this brand on your account. There's no hard and fast rule with that. I think it comes with engagement. It comes with a whole bunch of stuff. How much, exposure they're willing to give you for it. Because, I mean, if a massive brand comes to you and says, hey, listen, there's certain brands that you just can't say no to. And sometimes I'll say, cool, well, this is what we have as a budget. It's not quite what you're willing to do the work for, but we are linking you. We are putting this out there with your name on it saying, cool, this is the crowd of people that it's going to be fed to. And very, very often, every time it goes out to a larger audience, something comes back. So that's kind of that's kind of how it works. And it has been working like that for 2 years now.
Okay. Well, that's great. That's, cause I've always been very curious on how that works. Cause I know there's a lot of websites out there that kind of talk about, influencers and how to hire them. But you're right. I guess it's one of those case by case bases. So with everything that you're doing and your own personal, origami art and research, how do you manage your time and focus? Is there do you have a daily ritual that you do, or that something that you keep consistent, or how does that work?
When it comes to work, I keep it very loose. I make sure that I have enough time whenever. I mean, I'm always working. I think when you become an entrepreneur, it's like you don't really switch off. I think it's important to have specific times that you need to switch off. I mean, you can't be thinking about work at 2 a.m. in the morning every morning, although, that happens sometimes depending on what's going on. But for me, I have like a morning routine of, I meditate in the morning. I have a breathing exercise that I do. And yeah, so I try and, my weekdays, I try and structure as sort of routine based as possible. But when I get to work, I just know that when I'm here at work, whatever I've got going on, I'll work on that. And I'll make sure I get that out as, I try work quickly. I do work very quickly. I'm a very sort of focused individual as well. So I know that if I've got something to do, especially if I'm excited about it, I can crank it out really quickly. Mm-hmm. And I think a lot of the time you associate doing something quickly with like, oh, well, the quality is it's not going to be as good. But I just have found that I get the work out and I make sure it's at least at sort of 80%, and pushing it to 90%, the amount of time it takes me, is it really going to be worth, the energy that I'm putting in? Am I really going to get the return on investment in terms of getting it out there and making sure it's perfect? I'm not a perfectionist at all. And I just see a lot of artists and creatives trying to put their work out there that is like, oh, but it's not ready to go out. It's like, just put it out, see what happens, just throw it out there. And obviously, I mean, you have to put the work in and do, and make sure that it is of a good quality. But mm-hmm. For me, if I've got work to do, I knuckle down and get it done. I don't know if that's a proper routine, but whatever it is, it does work for me.
Yeah, I mean, if it works for you, then that definitely sounds like a good routine. So you alluded briefly to this about just, not being afraid to put it out there and just get it out there. Obviously, being an artist, sometimes there are probably times when you feel apprehensive about your work. And definitely when you made the transition from your full-time position to being a full-time origami artist, there has to be some kind of fear associated with that. When it comes to fear, whether it's, fear of putting your art out there or fear of new projects or even when you transition to a new career, how do you approach times when you feel apprehensive and fearful, and how do you push past that?
I think I make sure that my conscious thoughts and conscious mind, or my monkey mind, let's call it that, the part of me that's just like, oh, it's not going to work, man, don't do it, you're going to die, something bad's going to happen. Mm-hmm. I almost have to coax that part of my mind into believing that it's going to be okay, mm-hmm. and staying relaxed, if you know what I mean. It's kind of, I just have to continuously like reassure myself, like if this is sort of leading up towards me quitting my job or starting a big project or taking on something that I'm not quite sure I'm going to be able to do. Mm-hmm. There are times where I'm just like, well, is it going to work? Shit, man, I don't know. And as long as I just stay relaxed and I just have to convince myself. And I've worked out how to do that, through whether it's meditation or exercise or eating healthy, whatever, anything that is just going to take me out of that. I do find that just taking myself out of an environment that I'm always in. Mm-hmm. So if I'm in the office a lot, and you almost build up this sort of fatigue in terms of, maybe not fatigue, but being in the same space all the time, it kind of becomes like, okay, it's very routine and mundane. And I find that I get a bit of doubt creeping in when it's just me in my office doing my thing, and it's like, okay, listen, let me just get out, go do something different. Mm-hmm. And every now and then, well, 9 times out of 10, I'll be like, cool, I'll snap out of it and just push through it. But the fear leading up to it, I think, is all relative. For some people, this what could be the most daunting thing ever. I mean, like standing up in front of a stage of people, or standing up on a stage and speaking to a whole bunch of people, for some is just something they will never ever do. Mm-hmm. But when I get that feeling, and for me, because I do speaking gigs as well, and when you stand there and you think to yourself like, oh, I could never do this, for me, that drives me to want to do that, because for some reason, like, it's just your mind that's told you that it's going to be bad and it's going to be the worst thing that could ever happen. And once you move past that, you do it and you look back, you're just like, oh, well, it wasn't so bad. And what's funny, like particularly like when I quit my job, I had my head was just telling me, don't do it, man. It's going to be, oh, you shouldn't. No, come on, better not do it. And as soon as I quit my job and sort of 2 or 3 months later, it's like, you question that. You say like, well, was it that bad? And the very same mind will tell you, well, told you should have done it. So it's a broken thing, our minds, you know what I mean? Like it's that sort of, that part of you that just doesn't want to agree with you, but then will agree with you as soon as things are going, as they should be.
Mm-hmm. Oh yes. But parts of our mind are definitely fair weather fans like that.
Yeah, exactly.
When you speak, what topics do you speak on, and what kind of gigs do you get with your speaking engagements?
I think because my story is very different, I get asked a lot to just tell my story, how I made the transition from web developer to origami artist, or chat a little bit about origami, the art itself, which I now have quite a deep understanding of. So it's that sort of stuff. I mean, and I think maybe at some point it'll move into a more sort of, I don't know, motivational, inspirational space, because I've done the thing that a lot of people, and something I wanted to do as well, was, quit your job and do something different. I've done that thing now, and I'm making a success of it. So maybe teaching other, and I think this, just being here, speaking to you now, is about that. I mean, I just hope that someone hears this and just one person just goes, there we go, that's what I need to do. Get over the fear, or just take one thing away from it. So in terms of the speaking, it's just, just being a reminder to as many people as possible that whatever it is you want to do, just go and do it, because you live once. Well, depends on what you believe in, but you're here now. Just do your thing and just go be awesome,
Mm-hmm. So with that, what advice would you give to someone who wants to, I guess, let's say, quit their job and really focus in on what their art is, or someone who is an artist who just wants to make more money or a living from their art?
Stop being so precious about your work. Generally, I think that is the biggest thing with creatives and artists. I mean, I've worked with a lot of creative people, and they very pedantic and like, okay, well, it needs to be, that it's that whole perfection thing. And perfection is just, I mean, it's an insecurity. It's like you want to get it perfect, but who are you really doing it for then? If you are really into this thing, because I think any sort of art or creative venture that you sort of go on, you do because you have an interest in whatever it is you want to do, and you're passionate about it. You don't have to be like wildly passionate about it, but you enjoy it and you enjoy doing it. And as soon as you start like worrying about like, oh, is it good enough? Obviously you have to be happy with what you've done and the work you've put out there, but just let it go. It's also the whole sort of thing around ideas. Like, your ideas, I don't think belong to you, so set them free. So just let them out there, because I think maybe what happens is when you come up with a good idea and you're like, oh yes, it's a good idea, I'm not going to tell anyone about it. Then for some reason you just think like, oh well, if I do put it out there, someone else is going to steal it. But if you've come up with one good idea, then you can come up with another good idea. I mean, you are infinitely creative. That's what we are. We are creative beings. We make, we create. That's what it is. So, I mean, I think to be in that sort of creative flow state all the time, just continue to put your ideas out there. Don't really worry about the feedback. I mean, if you're getting a lot of flack and people are saying, dude, go back to your job, it's like, then, but even that, I mean, I'm sure so many artists and so many musicians and actors and anyone who's pursuing something that is seen as quite like, I don't know, quite different. They've all gone through that where, they get told by critics and whatever that, oh, your work is really shit, you should go and, don't quit your day job, the whole thing. So yeah, just don't be so precious about what you're putting out there.
If you were starting over now, would you pick Instagram again as your platform? Would you go with another social media outlet or even another website?
That is such a good question. I mean, right now I'm just completely engulfed in Instagram. Okay. I enjoy it. I enjoy, speaking to people and meeting creatives online and just chatting to the people that I interact with and that interact with me through my work. And I mean, the platform, like we've seen with any other social media platform, has its, it has its sort of beginning stages. And I think I'm quite fortunate in that I caught it particularly here in the country I'm in, and maybe, globally as well, where it was just starting to heat up. And it was like, because it was a pretty new platform. So, 2013, 2014 was like, there were a lot of these sort of 365-day projects going around. And the way Instagram worked, I think, was conducive to me and a lot of other people. I know a lot of other South Africans as well, and people around the world that have used Instagram to get to where to create a full-scale business for themselves. But going forward, you'd have to have some sort of connection to the ether to know what